never really been a massive fan of Studio Ghibli. I know some anime fans that let the company have a huge grip on them as they sit and watch My Neighbor Totoro for hours on end. But I never really seemed to feel as connected to them as some people did. That was until I found a challenge, which was to watch every single Studio Ghibli film, and I thought, why not? Maybe I'll finally understand why people like this company so much and why it is so beloved. Before you continue with this video, I just want to warn you that I don't have the same nostalgia for these films that some people do. I may be a little bit more harsh than the average person. I never grew up watching these films. So I'm going to briefly talk about some of the films that I'm a bit indifferent to, but also talk more extensively about the ones that had a really big effect on me, whether it was good or bad. The first Ghibli film that I remember ever watching was My Neighbor Totoro. I personally think this was a mistake because it had no effect on me. Don't get me wrong, it's cute, but I wouldn't say it's anything amazing if you didn't grow up with it. I think it's the character design that mostly stood out to me. Look at this guy, isn't he just so cool and cute and silly? And this guy, maybe if UK transport looked like this, it wouldn't smell like desperation and piss. Or maybe it would. Does the inside of the cat smell like cat insides? Now that's a thought. The story wasn't really anything I was interested in though. It's like if I showed SpongeBob to someone who didn't grow up with it. I think it's creative and funny, but I wouldn't expect someone who doesn't have the same nostalgia for it to sit and watch it. Maybe I'm a moody bitch who hates fun, and plenty of adults like it, but personally, I couldn't recommend it to someone unless they are quite young. Start the downward spiral early, I say. The same pretty much goes for Ponyo and Kiki's Delivery Service. However, I think I preferred Kiki's Delivery Service more to the others. I loved following the adventures and self-discovery of Kiki, and I think it stuck with me despite the demographic. I really enjoyed the character of Ursula and how she speaks about her experiences with art block, and I can definitely relate to that.
I love to paint so much. I'd paint all day until I fell asleep right at my easel. And then one day, for some reason, I just couldn't paint anymore.
Overall, the aesthetic of the film was often beautiful and charming, and it made me feel very uplifted, but still, those type of Ghibli films, they didn't really appeal to me. But on the other hand, Howl's Moving Castle is a bit of an outlier to me. It's definitely not what I would usually enjoy, but I've seen it so many times. I think it's become like a comfort film for me, always making me feel cozy. I must admit the story isn't really amazing and it has some plot holes, like the war. I felt like the plot point was quite unfinished. Maybe I'm dense, but it took me a few watches to fully understand the plot, and it's not even that complicated. What really made this film a favourite for me was the characters. I love Sophie, and how she becomes more and more confident and headstrong when she becomes an old woman. Old age isn't often represented in films, and it makes me so happy to see a film that acknowledges how strong old women can be with all their wisdom. Then we have Howl. Did I like him just because he was voiced by Christian Bale in the dub? Perhaps. Howl is literally me, guys, plus he's got a great story arc. Yeah, that's why I liked him totally, for the story. I enjoyed watching From Poppy Uphill, Castle in the Sky and Tales from Earthsea, but none of them really stood out to me except for the fact that Earthsea gets way too much hate. Some people call it boring, but it was on the same level as something like Castle in the Sky for me. I really enjoyed The Secret World of Arrietty, and it reminded me of Tinkerbell films that I loved as a kid. It wasn't some grand film, but I really connected to the characters. I loved the creativity of the little house and how so much of love was clearly put into designing it. Arrietty made me cry, but When Marnie Was Here left me crying and confused. Both of these films were directed by Yonebayashi Hiromasa, and when he directed Arrietty, he was the youngest in the company to direct a film. When looking at his work, I can see that he has worked on a lot of animation. It's some of the best anime like Lane or Monster, and we see how he worked his way up to the top, which is nice to see. In Arrietty, I saw a lot of potential, but nothing amazing. But When Marnie Was Here was truly a top tier Ghibli film. Except for the ending. Oh my god, let me tell you, this is kind of a spoiler. I thought there was lesbian subtext until it was revealed that Anna and Marnie are 100% not lesbians. Marnie was her grandma, and I've never been so shocked. It's like Hiromasa got done with the script and was like, damn, this shit is kinda gay, and added in a plot twist. It was a good film anyway, but why did you have to ruin it for us, Hiromasa? Of course, Miyazaki does not mess around with gay tension in his films, and sticks with what he knows best. It makes sense that Miyazaki really thrives when it comes to making films about planes, since his father was the director of Miyazaki Airline. We have Porco Rosso, which stars one of my favourite Ghibli characters, Porco himself. He reminded me a little bit of Spike from Cowboy Bebop, and I can imagine a world where Faye got annoyed at Spike and turned him into a pig. It's a boatload, or I guess you could say a plane load of fun. Out of the plane films, I've got to say that I do prefer Wind Rises though, because I used to be a massive World War II nerd, reading a lot of books about it. I found the concept of someone having to compromise their dreams because of money, physical limits and circumstances really interesting. In a way, Jiro gets to do what he loves because he gets to make planes like he always wanted to, but he has to do it under someone else's rules. In a way, it feels like he's betraying his hero, Caproni, because the war prevents him from building planes to make him happy, as aircraft is now seen as a weapon. This is relatable for a lot of people, even if your job has nothing to do with planes. For example, I want to be an actor, because I love abstract theatre and sending a message to the audience. However, there is a good chance that I will get stuck making adverts or at best being in EastEnders. Some may say that, hey, you get paid enough, you get to do what you want, but is it really your dream if you're doing it under someone else's terms? Anyway, I'm waffling. I'm trying to say that Wind Rises is truly a really cool film. Except I felt like the romance was a little bit undercooked, because I didn't really care for it, but I know some people that really like it, so maybe you would. Okay, now here comes some bad news. I know. There's going to be people with pitchforks at my door any minute because I am saying this, but it is the truth. I've got to be honest. I did watch Princess Mononoke and Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, and I thought they were both very good, but I couldn't get into them. I was kind of putting them both off because I'm not really into films about action and I wasn't really interested in them as I expected. Maybe I'll like them more if I rewatch them, but I really can't offer much comment on them at the minute. But then, not so surprisingly, Spirited Away was amazing. It's understandable that it won an Oscar because it is truly beautiful. Objectively, it's probably one of the best Ghibli films. Personally, it isn't even in my top 5. Spirited Away was a very grand film with amazing creatures and animation in a world that is amazingly built, and it qualifies as a magnum opus for Miyazaki. Then on the other side, we have the last Ghibli film that I truly hated. I watched Ocean Waves, and not even that long ago, and I don't even remember anything about it, to be honest. Like, we had this bitch who was rude, and these guys from the fashion Pinterest thing, and that's all I know. It's made by the younger staff at Ghibli, so they didn't have much experience. It's super cool they got a chance to make something, even if it did bore me to sleep. I hope to God they didn't get fired or anything for making such a rude bitch, but it certainly was an attempt, oh my god. Now, something that surprised me is how many Ghibli films left me absolutely destroyed. I mean dead on the floor, in cardiac arrest. There are only 2 more Ghibli films I am yet to talk about that are not directed by one of my favourite directors of all time. These films are Whisper of the Heart and its sequel, A Cat Returns. Whisper of the Heart is a very special film to me. I remember watching Shea Frillis Productions video on Ghibli, and spoiler, he put it at number 1, and I was confused because I'd never heard of it. Then I put it on and I was like, is that Country Road? And by the end I was sobbing. I think this is because the film made me feel so seen. We follow Shizuku, a girl who is obsessed with fairy tales who really can't be bothered with her schoolwork. This is until she decides she wants to become a writer. She becomes so dedicated that she can't do anything else. I think anyone who has ever worked on something and had that to only fill their brain will find her relatable like I did. These scenes where her stories are shown are incredibly vibrant, but everything else has this muted tone that makes everything feel so real. The romance in this film is also good enough to make anyone feel lonely. I see why people say Spirited Away is the best Studio Ghibli film, but for me, Whisper of the Heart is just so important to me and it will always be one of my favourites. We will never get another film like this because it was directed by Yoshifumi Kondo, who passed away in 1998 at 47. I was really upset when I found this out. Why do the most talented people always have to be gone so soon? There is also a sequel called A Cat Returns. It's nowhere near as good, but it's still a very cute film and it feels like the stories that she would have written. Also, I love cats, so I enjoyed it. It's very much a mid-tier Ghibli film, but I actually preferred it to some of the more popular ones. I'm a simple guy, I see a cat, and I enjoy the film. However, keep furries away from this film because, I mean, look at this guy, he's practically the Japanese Nick Wilde. I'm yet to speak of some of the best Ghibli films because I wanted to discuss them all together. Ladies and gentlemen and others, I present to you Isao Takata. I love a lot of anime directors. We have my favourite director of all time, Satoshi Kon, who created horrifying, emotional masterpieces. But then we have my second favourite, the man who I like to call the master of emotion, Isao Takahata. Now we first of all have to talk about his less emotional films. We have Pompoko, which is an incredibly underrated Ghibli film in my opinion. I love how it teaches about how the animals are taken from their homes for people to build. We get attached to these animals because of the documentary-like style, and boom, their homes get stolen. It's like, damn, while the film is clearly aimed at younger people, I was still fully entertained by it. For me, it achieves what My Neighbour Totoro didn't. It still sticks with me even though I have zero nostalgia for it. Maybe it's slightly drier compared to My Neighbour Totoro, but I really enjoyed it. Or because raccoons are cool? Oh, and also, I forgot to mention, the balls! Balls everywhere! There are just balls everywhere in this film. Now, there is a reason behind the balls. There is it's like folklore behind it, which is really cool, but there are just so many balls. It's quite surprising. Before this challenge, I never expected there would be a Ghibli film with so many balls, but here we are. My Neighbours the Yamadas isn't his best, but it's still very underrated. It's just a cute film about a family that get up to shenanigans, and the art style is an interesting shift away from the usual look. However, after a while it did get a bit boring, and I would have probably enjoyed it more if it was episodic. But now, we can talk about his truly amazing films. Only Yesterday is another underrated film that comes close to rivaling the emotion of When Marnie Was Here or Whisper of the Heart. It mirrors the life of a woman of when she was a child compared to what she is now. It's very slow and there isn't much action or excitement. A lot of people would probably find it boring. However, I tend to like character-driven media, so it was perfect for me. There is also one scene that stuck with me for no good reason. Taiko really wants a pineapple, and when they get it, they have no idea how to open it. The whole family decide to try it and end up not liking it after all the build-up. Nothing really exciting happens, but I just love this scene so much. I watched the film with my mum and it made us laugh because we have definitely had similar experiences like that. The real highlight of the film were the scenes where she's out on the farm when she's older. It's obvious that Takahata cares so much about nature and has a big interest in it when we see Only Yesterday and Pompoko. The ending hit me in such a weird way because I started crying and didn't even realise I was sad. It really did make me want to run away and live on a farm somewhere. Now, I know I said Whisper of the Heart is my favourite Ghibli film, and while it technically is, I have two other favourites. The Tale of Princess Kaguya. Oh my god, it's beautiful. The animation is stunning, and the old style just looks so dainty and flowy. It's the most expensive Ghibli film, but this is more than just a film. It's a piece of art. The story isn't some creative, amazing thing we've never seen before, but that doesn't mean it's not just as good. It has so much meaning that I could just waffle on about, but there are already videos about that I will link for you to watch because they could talk about the meaning much better than I ever could unless I made a whole video about this one film. Honestly, just watch it. It's an emotional and happy sad sight to behold. A lot of the time when people talk about Ghibli, I noticed they didn't really say much about Grave of the Fireflies. I never really understood this until I tried to talk about it myself. I mentioned earlier that I have always found wars interesting and watched a lot of war films, but nothing could prepare me for this. Once again, we see Isao Takahata shine by focusing on characters rather than grand action, because that's what he does best. There are a lot of war films showing big battles or even other Ghibli films like Howl's Moving Castle that are filled with action, but if those films are loud, Grave of the Fireflies is quiet. I feel like it's the same with a lot of Takahata films, like Pompoko. It's a small documentary. It's a comedy with a message. Only Yesterday focuses on a few people in calmer settings, and Grave of the Fireflies is a story about two children as they try to navigate their way through the war. A lot of people say that this is the type of film you only watch once, and I understand. People focus way too much on the fact that the film is sad and not enough on the message. Saito isn't an all-around good person. This is the main boy in the film. He is incredibly nationalistic, and even when the war is causing him problems, he still remains on the Japanese side despite the fact that they are also killing and bombing people. The people around him become selfish and mean as the war takes over, and for me, it's not just about how the children are affected by the war, but also how it changes people. This film also highlights how selfish people can be in general. Saito cares so much about keeping his pride that he puts himself and his sister in dangerous situations. I watched this film once with my mum and once with my dad. My dad didn't like it. When I said war, he expected battles, and I showed him a quiet film. My mum, on the other hand, sat through the whole thing, and we were both crying by the end. Sadly, this truly talented man, Isao Takahata, who directed the film, passed away in 2018. but at least he left some beautiful art behind. I think this says a lot about Ghibli. We have people who love quiet films and people who like loud films, and me who likes a bit of both. However, now I understand why people love Ghibli. I may not like the most popular Ghibli films, but that doesn't mean I have not grown to love the studio. I hope people take away from this that you should take some time to watch less popular Ghibli films, and maybe you'll be surprised by what you enjoy. Miyazaki has just released what he claims to be his last film, but apparently he says that all the time, so it might not be his last film. But you never know. I can't wait to see it. Hopefully we see some planes. Man, does this guy like planes. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm writing the script right now and I can already tell it's going to be a bitch to edit. I'm back at college now, so I have less time for videos, but not that I was that consistent in the first place. But please subscribe if you want to check out more in the future, because hopefully a lot more is coming. And I hope you guys like my new avatar. Check out my friend Checkered in the description. He makes really cool art and you should check it out. Have a great day.